of officers. I would like to offer that I have been chair of this commission for 12 years, and I've been on this commission for 17 years. And I believe I'm the last remaining original member of this commission as appointed by Alex Raisin. It has been an enormous honor to do so, and I'm very proud of the work that we've done here. And I look forward to the great work that we're going to be doing in the future under the new leadership. And I've always been a fan of term limits, so I think that this is going to be excellent. Do I have any nominations for, we're going to be nominating both chair and vice chair this afternoon. Do I have a nomination for chair?
I nominate Jeremy Rothwell for chair.
I'll second each. Okay, I second that.
Yes, I can. Is that better? Okay, I second that. All right, vote stands. Jeremy Rothwell is hereby elected chairman of the Historic Preservation Commission of Kent County from this time forward. Do I have a nomination for vice chair?
Nominate ourselves. Just for
I would like to nominate Jennifer to vice chair of the Historic Preservation Commission of Kent County. Do I have a second? Jennifer Moore, pardon me.
Second it.
Motion carries. Jen is the new vice chair of the Historic Preservation Commission of Kent County. Congratulations, Jen and Jeremy. That being said, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Jen as the new vice chair in Jeremy's absence. So I turn the meeting over to you, and I am now just, I am a commission member. So, all right.
The first order of business is to go through, second order of business will be to go through the minutes for the last meeting. Max, can you hear us?
I certainly can. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Does anyone on the commission have a question or edit for the minutes from our previous meeting?
I do not.
The meeting was called to order on June 22nd at 6 p.m., so we know what date we're talking about.
I do not have any changes. Max, do you have changes?
No changes from my end. I recommend we approve the minutes.
Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Minutes are approved as stand, or the minutes are approved as they're written, and we'll have those filed in the office. Welcome and orientation for new members. Bill, is that something, do you want to lead the in-house part of that with regard to going over, or do
I'm
you want us
happy
to
to
just go
talk to
through
that.
those? Could
I'm
you
happy
start
to
with
talk to
that, and then we
Sure.
can get into any other sessions?
Well, since I'm the only new member here and Darius isn't here, maybe we can do that offline with Bill when it's
Sure.
convenient to Darius, rather than
That's
take
fine
up
by
the
me.
committee's time.
Do you want to maybe a highlight, Jen?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
I don't want to, we always have about this quorum each time, and I don't want to reduce what we do in the meetings based on that quorum, because we all have work schedules that tend to interrupt in the way that they do.
Right.
So we don't have to go through necessarily line by line of anything, but to go through the basic piece, because it's part of what we're doing after this part of the meeting, so,
Yep, I'm happy to do that.
yeah.
Sure. So there's 4 documents included in your orientation. These are the 4 adopted documents that relate to this body. You have your own set of bylaws. In reviewing those, I think they probably need to be reviewed and revised. Right now, there's a standard regular meeting that coordinates with Planning Commission, and I think that's with the assumption that items are generated that would require your review on a monthly basis. And that's not the situation. We don't have that much traffic in in preservation issues at this time. The bylaws also have what I would call a quasi-judicial lineup. I think we should probably review that and find out if that's the appropriate way to handle those certificates of appropriateness. Yeah, I hear that too. Okay. And we need to do things like update state references, like Article 6B. The next document is the comp plan. This provides a history of not only preservation in the county, but also of this board. Tells the story of this board and preservation in general, and outlines a variety of goals, including things like oral histories and other preservation efforts. The land use ordinance has a single page that relates to this Historic Preservation Commission. That single page is 482, and that discusses the process by which buildings are reviewed and determined to be Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and photographic records are created prior to demolitions. And as with all of our historic preservation activities, those activities do not preclude demolition. So demolitions can still occur, but it creates an opportunity for the board to take photographs of the property, et cetera, and there's a few steps to that. Finally, there's public laws. This is really the largest document that sets forth regulations for the Historic Preservation Commission. This is where this body was created, terms are defined, the designation process is outlined, as well as certificates of appropriateness for those properties that are designated. It is a voluntary program, and as part of that voluntary program, currently there are only 7 properties. In order to have the regulatory powers that this body has, each one of those properties is its own standalone separate district. So each property is considered a district. So when changes are made to those properties, they need to come before you for certificate of appropriateness, but only for those 7
You
properties.
know, since I've been reading the materials, the 7 properties have been, have their status since 2006, which is almost 20 years. And none have been added?
My
Isn't
understanding
part of
is-
the mission of this commission to solicit more? Is there, can you
You
tell
can
me
certainly
about
do that if you wish, but it is a voluntary program. I mean,
Well, I
it's-
understand, and what I, as I read it, and we can get into this later, I read it, there are no real incentives, but there is a penalty.
There are incentives.
Which,
Tax
it's not,
credits.
we're not advertising that. It's evidence in almost 20 years and no new houses or being built. It can't, it's not out there. I mean, for instance, I have an historic house. No one has ever spoken to me about it. And I'm more interested, I think, than most, anyway. But we can talk about that, something of great interest to me, so, please, go on.
Okay, all righty, thank you. And
Because,
would you-
because of the list of houses, the properties that you shared with the map, there are many, many, many candidates. And maybe we just need to do a better job of selling and advertising. And maybe that needs to be part of your job description whenever the opportunity arises.
We can definitely talk about that as an option. I think staffing and budget limitations are pretty severe.
I know they're real.
Madam Chair, have I covered enough for this item? Would you like me to go back over any of the 4 documents we talked about with more detail?
Just to go over, so part of why we're going over tonight is the Bryce's Mill project. And part of that is to make sure that the committee is clear about the authority we have and don't have with regard to reviewing the demo permits. From the position of the planning office, can you just review what that is?
Certainly. So when demolition permits come in, the first step is to determine if the property is 75 years or older, based on the records that are available to us. When it's close, we always consult one of you all to sort of get more information, because you have a better idea than that. But oftentimes, there's, SDAT will have dates, or property owners will know the dates, so it's often easy to determine. Once that it's found to be more than 75 years old,
Bill, excuse me, Bill. We're not talking about the property, we're talking about the structure?
yes.
Yes, sir.
This is for demolition of structures. Yep. So the first step, which is a Tier 1 review, is to determine whether the structure meets the definition of an historic structure in our code. Part of that, the main part of that is whether it's 75 years or older. Tier 2, if it is found to be more than 75 years or older, or thought to be of historic significance, then the permit requires documentation. The applicant provides us with a basic floor plan, and then the department conducts a site inspection and photographs are taken. At this point in time, Jen has really been the person, Jen and Biz sort of decide between them who will do that, and you all have been doing the photographs and the documentation, which is wonderful. We're very appreciative. We don't have the ability to do
What
that.
I would offer too is it occurs to me in conversations I've had of late that folks in the county actually have no idea that we do any of that there's any work that's done internally and with the commission to accomplish these things. I mean, a lot of volunteer hours go in by our
Absolutely.
members to make an effort to support the county staff and to document these structures and try and work with the homeowners to find another solution if there's one to be had. So that's something, that I think is interesting to note, because people are always surprised when I tell them that, and I think that's too bad.
Yeah, that is a shame. Yeah, you all do a lot. It's very helpful. We would not be able to do that without your help, for sure.
And the owners often find it extremely beneficial because if they haven't already thought of a way to rehab something or to do salvage of any of the products, then they learn that normally through us, or if they already have resources to do that.
I mean, we may not have as many houses listed, but we have documented 3 times or 4 times that amount of buildings, a lot of buildings.
But I want to say that I know that's true, and it's commendable. But I live in Chesterville. There are 5 houses in Chesterville which have disappeared within the last, 18th century houses, which have disappeared within the last 10 years, 15 years.
Yep.
20 years,
Yeah,
Yep.
20 years. Well, it's
So whatever we're doing isn't enough.
no, and
It's-
it doesn't
yeah.
ever seem actually like it's
No,
enough.
I
But
know,
we
but
certainly
so-
can always do more, and having new blood on a
And we need to
commission
think about how to
and
do that.
new members helps us to move forward.
Right.
So that's where we are, and that's,
And I think one of the main things, and this is part of what we've gone over these for, is that when it comes to our authority, all of these houses are on private property, and when it comes to our position to talk to them, is not, we don't necessarily have the authority to tell them, no, they cannot on their own property, but we work with them to find out if there are solutions.
It can be
to
part of the mission of this commission to lobby, if we need to, for more authority, for change in legislation.
you can always, certainly, you can amend legislation, and
But I mean, if we don't do anything, nothing's going to happen. I mean, clearly, the requirement to record the house is not a detriment, not a deterrent to anybody.
nobody's saying that they would prefer to have the document rather than the structure.
No, of course not.
We would much rather all of us have the structure.
Well, for instance, not to take us too far off the subject, this week in Kennedyville, there was a house went up for sale at auction. It's a total wreck. I mean, it's a disaster. It's an 1859 house. It's, for most people would say it's not an efficient, not a good business investment to renovate it. So it will probably come down when the buyer recognizes the house has no foundation in it. And yet, I'm 100% certain that the agents who were selling and the buyer who was buying have no idea that, of what is going to be the requirements placed on them if we choose to place them on preserving or recording this structure. It's a house that nobody knows or cares about, but it's part of our heritage, and it's now almost 200 years old, and I'm willing to guess that most people in the room don't even know what it is, and it's right there in Kennedyville.
I think one of the questions, and this is why we're here to talk about this, so forget this out here for a second. When it comes to going on those properties, though, and this is for conversation and fodder back and forth, one of the things that comes up for us regularly, and I hear it every time I go to a property, and this is on the case of what we're talking about for Bryce Mill today, is that there's a line in the sand there, and I hear what you're saying about protection and all those things. We're not here because we don't feel the same way that you
Sure.
do about keeping these houses. We've seen a lot of houses we would love to see still standing today that are not.
Almost everyone.
You know,
Everyone,
right.
practically. When it comes to these houses, though, we go back to the private property rights, we go back to the private property owner, we go back to their ability to say yes or no to the demolition, even if there's guidelines.
I
John,
understand.
hold on for a second. When it comes to those kind of guidelines, to change an entire law that says you no longer have a property right because of the age of your structure, in both counties, we're in a position to consider if there's history involved. Like, that's why a lot of the Harriet Tubman stuff stops things in its tracks, because of the nature of that story. But if we're talking about a home that may have history, but is largely a family location that is by its nature in that 1700 space, however old it is, that we can require, if we had the authority to say you cannot tear it down, we don't have the authority to say you must take care of it. So in some cases, I can tell you,
Yep,
we've had
that's true.
houses that, and I'll use the one that's in before us this evening, if the house that we're going to discuss this evening was structurally unsound, but they were going to be forced to make it stand, they could essentially build their home in front of it and
Hang on,
let
I
it.
think because we're not discussing that right now, that
Right.
case, we should not discuss that property
Right.
until we get to it.
Sounds good.
Pardon me.
But that's happened to several houses where if we had the authority to say no, and we would have loved to have said no and spend the money to fix it, there's no generation of money to fix it, so we
I
can't.
understand
So
that.
I'm gonna-
So
I'm
I'm just saying
gonna-
we need to be creative in the future. There are examples in other jurisdictions in other countries where it's done, and we need to start thinking outside the box.
There's no question that making a more significant effort to publicize a message and to illustrate the benefits of doing it, and that it is an option for people, would be nothing but beneficial for the county and for the commission. And we should absolutely be prioritizing that, and there have been times when we have prioritized that, and we've tried to do that, and it's, we should keep trying, and we should do it. I think it makes a big difference when people know.
We just spent a great amount of time working on Turner's Creek.
Oh,
mean,
I
so
understand.
we definitely have the ability to argue cases. But yeah, I think it can go on the agenda for,
Oh, I mean, and there's other, well, we'll
Let's
come to
get
this
to,
later.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah. But there are other properties and properties that don't even have structures on them that could be within the purview of this.
Absolutely, they could, and we can figure that out.
and nothing keeps us from reviewing the properties, so. Nothing keeps us from reviewing properties
No,
if
no.
we have a
what
question, so.
No, but we can have a public voice.
I do think it would be worthwhile to review, when we're reviewing the ordinance, that we go through each section of it to find out what parts of the ordinance are not properly coordinated in terms of language and intent with the text amendment that we made that actually gives us review over some of these properties in terms of like the ability, for planning to have to be required to consult with us and to let us know what's happening before the permit is signed, a permit is signed, and we can go out and do that. I think when we did that initially many years ago, at the time, it was a great success. I mean, we never had anything like that happen in this county. And it was staff and, the nature of the county at the time, people understood the value of that. That has not been reviewed. It should be reviewed, and all subsequent clauses relating to it or affecting it should also be reviewed for potential text amendments or any proposed changes we might see.
Very good. Thank you, Biz. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we did not do introductions. Hutchins, am I saying it correctly? Hutchins, your last name?
No, Lysinger.
Do we have, is John still on?
No, John was never on this.
And can you say it again for me?
Lysinger.
Lysinger, excuse me. We have two new members that we didn't formally introduce. We have John Lysinger on the committee now, who was just put on. When was your start date?
January 1, I think.
Okay. And we also have Darius Johnson, who cannot be with us this evening. So we have two new members on the committee for this year. So thank you for joining us. All right. Bill, did you want to do anything additional from your document?
Housekeeping?
I can just say that, once Tier 1's established, then there's the opportunity for Tier 3, Tier 2, which is the photographing, and then Tier 3 is if there's additional documentation required. That process is that either the chair personally or the chair's designee and the planning director, basically if the planning director and the chair or the chair's designee, any one of those three say, yes, we should do Tier 3, then Tier 3 proceeds. So, and that's a consultation if during the photographing process you all believe that a Tier 3 would be necessary. So that's essentially what happened with the granary. That Tier 3 review has been completed, so we're ready to move forward with that. And there's a time limit. The ordinance guarantees that, regardless of which tier, what review, what happens with photographs and documentation, at the stage where you get to 45 days past Tier 2 determination, then there's no, we can't keep the property owner from demolishing the structure, right? The time limit is on us to perform. 30 days is for Tier 2, and then 45 days is for Tier 3. Once those days pass, then once that time passes, then they're able to demolish the building. So really, it puts a time limit on us to produce the documentation. And there are emergency provisions, as were used in the item you're about to review, that allows for situations where, waiting would be hazardous or dangerous, so.
Hazardous to the public,
Hazardous,
says.
hazardous.
Hazardous to the public, not necessarily hazardous to it falling down. It's if it falls down and it hurts somebody, that's the concern. Whereas a farmhouse in isolation does not have that risk.
Where's that clause? Do we have that clause in our packets?
Yes, you do. It's the bottom of the page is 482 from the code, and it reads, emergency provisions. These requirements may be waived or modified by the planning director or the planning director's designee when a structure is deemed to be an imminent threat to health, safety, and welfare of the adjoining properties and persons. I would say that those persons include persons who own the property.
But we're going to get to this.
Where is it?
There were no adjoining structures any longer, and there were no persons living there or needed to be proximate to it if it was structurally unsound. So I have a
Can I suggest
severe
that,
question about this. Now, it's done.
hold on for a second, John. Can I suggest that we table this for when we actually get to the item? We're going
Yes.
to do the item next, just so we can ask all those questions right in line with that particular topic. What section are you in on here? What is
It's on
the,
orientation information. The packet
we can
isn't,
see.
isn't numbered, but it's the page that says land use ordinance on the left-hand side. It's about 12 pages in roughly.
Oh, okay.
I think it appears in two different places in the materials.
It may.
It's right after the comprehensive plan document.
Thank you.
thank you.
Do you want me to just hand it to you, just straight packets? Yeah, that's it. Yep.
That's it, okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't have my copy where I circled it.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
All right, next on our agenda is the Bryce Mill Farm. And who do we have present representing the Bryce Mill Farm?
The property owner is present online, the builder is present, the architect is present, and the gentleman who demolished the building is present. And two of those folks are Bryce's, so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
attending.
And I'm going to let them come up and sit here so they can talk with you.
Part of this is just working through.
You have little chairs on the side so we can add to
Yes.
that.
Start with the question
Perfect.
about the first part of the question, because that's actually on Bill and Planning Office too.
I want an understanding of what
Yeah.
was told to the planning office,
Yes.
and then how they executed that and what the decisions were.
Yeah, and Bill, we actually do need you back up here, because part of this conversation is starting with, and I was just going through it with Biz, part of the conversation for everyone, including for John and Darius, if they can listen, Darius, in case he's able to catch the phone, is to go through the process that the county started with. So we did the first demolition record when the first permit came in, and the question is starting from there. So can you come up and speak to that piece?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can start from where we just started to pick up, and that would be when the demolition permit came in, our first review, and then the events that happened in the order that they happened to get to the actual demolition of the historical home itself versus the first permit. And Bill, for the sake of this, time-wise, do you want me to keep track of any time? Because we have the other projects also to go through, just so I'm keeping an earnest amount of,
I'm not sure.
it's 5:30.
Oh, I see. The time isn't how much time we've left in the meeting. Well, I can certainly be quick. All I'm going to do is summarize the memo that's in the public packet. It's been posted online. I believe the applicant and property owner have a copy of that. You all have a copy of that. Basically on, quick summary, on May 9th of 2023, there were applications for removal of the frame barn. The property owner acquired the property. The goal was to return the property as much as possible to sort of its colonial state. There were changes and demolitions made to take away portions of buildings on the brick barn, on other barns that were additions to it to sort of bring it to its historical originality. On September 6th, there was a wood frame garage that was moved. And I believe the issue really started in December. I'm just going to sort of summarize when the applicant was trying to trying to remove additions to the main house. There was a holdup with the health department and approvals. There were storms coming. We issued some emergency permits to let them shore up foundations. Those storms came and basically filled the entire site with water, flooding the basement all the way up to ground level. And after that was recovered from, they went through a process of trying to determine what the conditions were, and that's when a lot of things were discovered. And I'd really rather have them tell the story, because, I mean, their intent and goal from the beginning was to restore this building to its sort of formal colonial status, and, you know, that's what they do, and they discovered a lot of things in that process that really, I think, was disheartening for them, so. So which of you all would like to start with your story?
I can start.
Jen, would you have some introductions?
Okay, I can start.
Can you all introduce yourselves as well?
Yes, so I'm Tammy Bryce. I did the design work on the structure, and
Colby Bryce, I'm the demolition contractor.
Bob Coleman, contractor.
Colby is my, and Porter is Lamar.
Don't forget it.
I can first tell you about this piece of property, because this piece of property is part of history that we as a family, the Bryces, was part of our family. We did not want this to happen, probably more so than anybody in this
How long
room.
has it been since it's been in your family?
I would have to ask,
John Bryce, I think, left the house in late 1700s into the 1800s.
So that's the.
because all the Bryce's Mill, yeah, I mean, that.
But it's been had many owners in between.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yes.
But I mean, even, you know, my husband's family had the land grant for,
Right, but you've had no contact with the buildings for 200 years then?
correct,
Okay,
correct.
right.
Other
So
than
in terms of your
bearing-
familiarity with the
Other
structure
than
and
the
the
fact
like.
that my husband's family has books and books of their history, with, what's the church? St. Paul's Church was in my family and my husband's land grant when they donated to them. We have some of the first graves there. I mean, so his family has been here over generation over generation. Lots of stuff's been documented. They still live on Rikesville, on the Rikes branch,
Yep.
on a farm there. So for us, this piece of property actually had a piece of personal history to us. And when Porter and Victorianas came to me to work on the farm, I was over the moon about it. I was very excited because they had every intent of refurbishing the house back to its original condition, which was grand. And I went through, like what I do with every project, I start with planning and zoning, with Beth Grieve, which led me to Mark Carper, which led me to Carla, which led me to Jennifer. And I met Jennifer Moore, who was kind enough to come out to the job site. She took some pictures. We walked around the property, was very excited about it. She was very excited that it wasn't coming down. We were very excited that it wasn't coming down. But Porter did want to make this a family home. So we ended up putting additions off to the house that would be very fitting and leaving the main structure as it was. We had every intent to do that. As we move forward, we had quite a hiccup in the health department, which set this project back probably 6 months.
Say
Yeah, somewhere in that. It was a huge setback because the gentleman kept moving, as Porter said, the fence post. We couldn't get answers. In the meantime, Porter's concerned, the house is deteriorating, because if you know, if a house, somebody doesn't live in it, and somebody doesn't take care of it, it does disintegrate. So as we move forward, we were starting to put the additions onto the house, And Bob, the builder, came in and started pulling everything out because unfortunately, the people who, I don't know whether it was before him or before them, had done some remodeling in there. And when they remodeled in there, they cut through some major beams and some other things, and they put wire through and holes through. So they did things that
Weren't up to code.
weren't up to
They
code.
modified it.
Right. So they cut through a lot of things, did things, and, the house had already had a lot of structural issues because there had already been work on it. We had already had big iron plates on it, and you could see where the brickwork had already been fixed. So when Bob and I got into it, and we had the mason come in, we had a structural engineer come in, and everything that there, of course, wasn't to code. But you're also going to have a family that actually is not going to use this as a showplace, but is actually going to live in this home. So as we going through, Bob was dismantling the house, and as he was dismantling the house, when he was vacuuming everything, he actually vacuumed out every mortar joint. The mortar joints were vacuuming out. Not only was the brick disintegrating
Hang on, how did the mortar joints get vacuumed out?
with the vacuum.
Shop vac. It was nothing left. Even the bricks, you could suck the whole brick out with a vacuum.
And the reason is,
They didn't keep it heated. They didn't,
I understand that. I
that doesn't mean
understand
it
the
can't be disappointed,
masonry is my
right?
specialty. I understand the
Yeah.
problems. I just,
and we asked
So
Carl.
that's too bad.
Yeah, we asked Carl Zerfus because we wanted to come back and originally go over with some of the bricks. Some people just painted brick, and that was, Carl said that's a problem. Because you cannot just paint brick. It has to have a special type of lime wash on it, because when you just paint brick, as most homeowners do, they don't realize that you cause a situation for condensation, and the brick will disintegrate, and especially the old Salmon brick will disintegrate. So when we asked him if he could come in to do a power wash to it, because he did a beautiful job in Centerville, he said he was going to look at it, but it's going to be a very tedious job because the brick could actually be coming with it. And we noticed that as we were going inside. But Porter, and then we still continued. There was chimneys without foundations, there was no foundation on the house, which is typical with a lot of older homes. But then, as Bob was pulling the house apart, when it came to the breaking point, Bob says, you have to come in here and walk in the house. And I said, sure. After all the drywall was off, everything. And I walk up the steps behind Bob, and Bob didn't have to say anything. I said, Bob, the house is moving. He says, I know. That's why you're here today. And he said, do you want to continue upstairs? I said, no, I don't. I do not want to move. I'm out of here. It's the first time in my entire life that I've ever got on a property that I could feel the house moving. And it wasn't a windy day. And I was out. And I'm like, I'm not going back in there. This is ridiculous.
Did the house have any structural cracks?
There was
yeah.
cracks all over it.
so,
I mean, it wasn't obvious from the pictures.
they were
no.
there. You could take and put your hand into the center of the chimney and touch the flues.
let me ask a question, and it doesn't really have a tremendous amount of bearing, but I'm curious.
Sure.
So you have a structure with compromised masonry walls.
Mhm.
And typically, when we have a structure like that, and we have a lot of them, we would, just for the future, we would assess the building to determine what the load capacity is, and whether the building needs to be shored prior to anything being removed, especially from the foundation area, because there's nothing to support it, because most of them just have a builder's trench, and they're sitting on the ground, or,
Correct.
right? So it sounds like it was a number of things came together that led to the destabilization of the building, unfortunately,
Nothing was really unstable until the rain came. We had the engineer draw up specs for us to underpin two sides of the foundation where we were adjoining and the chimney. We got to the point where we were ready to underpin, but because the health department held us up so long,
Right.
okay, so the grade changes 3+ feet, okay? Goes
That's a lot.
below the existing foundation, which we had the engineer draw up an underpinning plan. Sure. Okay? However, because it took 2 months for the health department, after the demolition, for the health department to, they didn't even give us authority. Finally, Mr. Mackey allowed us to continue forward because I was afraid of what was going on. It had already flooded twice.
I'm so sorry that we didn't know that this was happening
Apparently,
because,
nobody knew anything about this wanker at the health department.
well, I'm just
curious.
thinking that, and this sort of goes back to what John is saying and, what we could be doing more of, which is making it evident throughout the county that if you're having these problems on a structure like this, that's precious to you, precious to the county, and,
Right.
that there are resources. Sometimes, when you're working with these buildings, they're archaic materials, and they perform entirely differently than modern materials.
Very much.
Elizabeth,
They do. Yes,
Elizabeth?
Max?
I wanted to ask a question because I think it's important here. Bill, was a building permit necessary for this work?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So if a health department does not approve the permit, the application,
They signed off on the demolition permit only.
Who
Okay.
did?
Demolition of the
that's
addition,
kind of bizarre.
Correct.
only of the addition.
Only the addition, yeah.
So Max, what happened in this case is there has been significant holdups at the health department for reasons of staffing. They're very much understaffed. They've been getting help from MDE. The storm was coming. There was a holdup in approving their ability to work on the project, including stabilizing the foundations. So essentially, I issued the permit for stabilizing the foundations without health department's approval because of the storm that was coming in consultation with our building official. I mean, I met with our building official, we talked about it, he went to the site, he said, yes, this is very high risk, this needs to be immediately addressed, it's an imminent threat, and so based on that advice from our building official, we issued a permit without the health department's approval to stabilize the foundations of the house immediately.
Right.
What did that entail?
The underpinning.
Okay.
basically.
And then it rained.
And there must
That
have been
was-
excavation done.
I went to Mr. Mackey.
That's so
after
unfortunate.
the second flood. Okay, because the health department changed the goalposts about 5 times, okay? Every time I went to him, he said, you do this, I'll sign off on the permit. Okay, so we did that. Go to, not gonna sign off on it. Even after he finally signed off on the permit, he wanted us to install the field drains, okay, before he would sign off on the building permit. All right? And then, when we agreed to that, and I had the installer come to install the field drains, they were already there. They just weren't in their paperwork.
I'm so sorry that this has happened to you.
That's not unusual.
I am.
It didn't happen to me. It's
No,
happened
I mean,
to-
it kind of happened to you because you're working with the building, and when something like that happens, you're involved.
Yeah.
And everyone's involved. Everyone has a vested interest in making this go well. So it did. It happened to everybody. And it happened to the county. And because your family's history matters, and what they've built and brought to this county matters, and we care about it, and you care about it. So we can't bring this building back.
No, no. And
But what we can do is make sure that we review the emergency ordinance, because it does not work with the existing text that has to do with demolitions, that if we had known as a commission, if we were told as a commission that there was an 18th century house at risk, and that the owners were being boxed into a position where they were going to have to make a significant decision about the destruction of this property, it's my opinion that we should absolutely have known that. We should have been informed. We should have been informed by staff. We should have been told. I was never told. I don't believe Jen was ever told. And I think that is an issue for me.
I think every situation will be different too with something.
Absolutely, and I'm not trying to, but these processes have to be followed through. The basis of this whole conversation is that we have a resource we cannot replace. We have a resource that is so dear and special to us, that was built by your family, and the idea that you would be moving back into one of your family's properties is terrific. It speaks volumes to who we are as a county and our history. So if we had known that this was a problem, and if we had known that you were having problems with the health department getting approval for the underpinning, and suddenly ran it, all the way along, we may have been able to intervene. We may have been able to say something. I may have been able to say something. I may have been able to request staff to do something. But that opportunity was never afforded to us or to you.
Right, well, yeah, it's sad
I'm really
because,
surprised that the intervention by the health department stopped the restructuring of a foundation. I mean, that's just surprising to me.
It's surprising to me, too.
I mean, to go to the notification, I first learned about this through a Facebook posting
I learned
by the demolition company, bragging about the site being cleared, and my head just about exploded.
go ahead, Colby, you can respond to that, because it's your
And,
family.
and
I
there were
know how
lots of
sick he
comments
felt.
from the public not being aware of this
Yeah, I know,
until it
you said
happened.
he should be jailed for this.
Yes.
Well, I
It's
felt,
very-
I mean, I
it's
was very,
It was
And
very.
that's wrong.
let me just say, I was
It's-
very.
it's
very inappropriate
Let me
thing.
just say, I
It
was
is very
very, very
inappropriate.
disappointed, and I sympathize with what you're saying. But the fact that this happened without public notice, without any attempt from this body to try to help save it, made me upset beyond belief.
But that being said, it's not their responsibility to notify us. And it's not our responsibility, nor is it our place to have a personal opinion about their actions
Exactly.
or who they are.
And can
So I
just-
stand,
No,
I
appreciate
don't
that.
think that that's appropriate
I don't
in
think
any
it's
way,
appropriate.
shape, or form.
I'm just simply telling you what I thought at the time.
Okay, but obviously it reached their ears, and.
It
Well,
did,
it was intended to
it
reach
offended
the-
our
Well, right,
family.
but
Yes.
It actually
the
offended our
assumption being
family
that
very
they
much.
didn't, with no question being asked of them to say, why isn't it possible that this would be worse for them than anybody else? It's their property, it's their family. So
and-
I'm sorry about that. I'm going to apologize to you, because I was chair of this commission when that happened, and I apologize that that was said in any way in a public manner to you at any time by any one of us. All right?
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
It's not the position that we take.
It's
as a
not
whole
appropriate.
With regard to these
Sorry, John.
type of
That's just
projects.
not okay. No one should be jailed over it. What should happen is, this goes back to the original statement, that, we need to be more visible, and we need to do more outreach, so that we could have said, hey, you guys, you're having a problem? And staff could say, listen, this is a historic building. We're having a problem with the historic building. We need to talk to our Historic Preservation Commission that's been legislated, voted in by the people of this county. That's why we serve. We were elected to do this. The ordinance was passed. They wanted this. And until such time as they say they don't want this, we will continue to serve. And it is our God-given right to do that.
Yeah, no,
So,
I commend you for what you do. I love this is why I haven't left this town. I went to college and came back to this town, because I love it. He plans on staying here. We love this area, and I appreciate everything you're doing. But in this case, I mean, as long as I've been in business, I mean, I have always went to the health department, planning and zoning, a great relationship. I talked to Jennifer, was wonderful at site. She knew with the intent was
She's
not.
incredible.
She is, yeah, it was not our intent. And it got to a point where it's like, we got to a point, there was nothing else we could do. And thank God for the grace of Porter and his wife Victoria, who are willing to put that a tremendous amount of money back in this property and build this house historically as close as we can, because it has to go to code requirements.
well, I would actually offer that
Back
you
up.
might consider building it differently.
Yeah.
Because if you're looking at, I'm a professional preservationist, that's what I do. And so when you're looking at interpreting, let's say, the National Park Service standards, the Secretary of the Interior standards for preservation, reconstruction, rehabilitation, restoration, new construction, they say that it should be complementary but not the same. You should be able to tell that it's not, you're not trying to historicize something, because
Right.
you can't reproduce that building. You don't have the
we
clay
can't.
and you don't have the wood, and you can't.
can't.
But you can do something similar that speaks to it. And
Yeah,
in doing that,
yeah.
you might actually end up with something that you can really utilize,
Yeah,
like
we
in a
are,
very
and-
good way.
And Porter, like I said, they've been unbelievably understanding about everything. We salvaged almost every beam out of there.
Can you talk a little, I was going to ask you that, can you
They
talk a little bit
salvaged
about
almost
that?
every beam, the flooring, doors, knobs, cabinetry, brick. Even though you may have interpreted what my son said, I mean, we figured this is a rebirth, so you get to a point, you grieve and you're sad. But for him, it was like, this is a rebirth for his generation to see something that when the demo was taking place, they picked up almost every brick that they possibly could handle. We've got brick with cat prints that was
Are
crazy
they
when
covered
it was
with
made.
tarps? Please tell me they're covered with
Yeah,
tarps.
yeah, so it's amazing how many cubes and stuff, and there's not many homeowners that would say, okay, we're willing to pay you to pull as many brick out of here that is not decayed and that we can salvage and use again in this house and the beams.
job.
And I mean, it took quite amount of time for that.
Good job.
So I think the county is going to be very pleased with what they're doing and what we're doing, because at the end of the day, you're not gonna have this grand modern structure, and I love modern as well, but it's not fitting it back on this place. You're gonna ride by and say, look, that's a great home for Kent County, represents well.
Well, let me personally apologize to the owner, and I'm still quite upset. I do understand what you're saying. I don't know, as I read it, I think it's commendable that you want to reproduce it. I don't feel that that's important to me. And I do care that you are taking the effort here, but I wish you to understand that when I read that Facebook posting, my head just about exploded because I didn't know anything about this. And I've seen too many demolitions in the county where it just happens, and they don't clearly have the good intentions that you folks have.
And I appreciate, I absolutely, it was hurtful, because I appreciate that. I very much appreciate that, and it's interesting to know, like, how hurtful it was for him, because, we have always taught, I've always taught our children that you don't have a comment about something, you don't make an opinion about something until you have the knowledge to make that opinion. But I understand your emotions took over, so I appreciate
And
that.
also, in other jurisdictions, you would be required to rebuild it, and I think that's kind of silly.
Right.
But, and maybe it's just the commission's fault, the county's fault, certainly the health department's fault.
I would say that it's not the commission's fault.
Well,
And it's
no,
not-
I'm just, but
there's
the
no-
lack of information, the process, I'm very much going to be I'm here to be in the process, in the extending information, ensuring we've got a process in place so that these things are less likely to happen in the future. I know we can't prevent them, but less likely to happen in the future. And, and I apologize for the response to the Facebook posting, but it's a Facebook posting. And it was, the way it read to me was, look at the good work we've done in clearing this site.
And they did, they
Well,
took
but-
each time to take a brick
Yeah,
abuse.
but you don't take,
It was still
I think this
factual,
was a set of
it
extraordinary
was-
circumstances.
Sorry, Max?
I said, I think this was a set of extraordinary circumstances that we do not run into on a regular basis.
I agree.
So I
totally agree.
appreciate the owner's good intentions, and I'm sorry if it offended you, but you have to understand how sensitive some of us in this community are to preserving our heritage.
I as well.
I think they're extremely familiar with what you're asking, and maybe just apologize and don't say but.
I just did.
No, I heard you, I just meant,
Okay.
we're good.
So, if I may, I think the only thing that we can do going forward is to make sure that people in the county know better that we are here, that we are far more visible, and the resource that we provide to people in the county when it comes to planning historic properties, working on historic properties. We operate in partnership with engineers, we operate in partnership with architects all the time. We need them, they need us. We know different things.
Right.
And this is a specialty. You're dealing with a very particular type of material when you're working with these structures and what they will and will not do. And they do have a mind of their own, as we know. So going forward, I think the best outcome could be that we make more efforts in that direction to let the public know who we are and what we do, and that we're here to answer anybody's question at any time. If you have a property, you want to know something about it, or, can you help me with materials? Can you help me understand, is there something else I should be doing here? And I think you'll have an amazing set of resources at your service.
No, I greatly appreciate it.
So,
I think
And-
if you can remember, we reached out, or she did, to you guys way before we started permitting or anything, because the intention was to redo this the
Yeah.
best that we could.
oh, yeah.
It
And,
just went downhill,
yeah,
unfortunately.
Well, like Max said, I think it was an extraordinary
It
set of
just went-
circumstances that you would open up the foundation and get ready to start doing pinning, which involves large open sections of ground, and it floods and the whole thing goes sideways. That happens. It's just,
That's exactly what happened.
One of the enormous benefits to what
it's
we have
terrible. I'm
established.
so sorry. So sorry that happened to you.
Is that when we go do the pictures like we did, one of the benefits to those is we're not just photographing the house and the structure, we're photographing everything from every ounce of decay that we see, because it helps us in situations like this. So we now have this to go back and say when we see it again. We've seen the brick where you just sort of blow it out of
Yeah,
the,
it's crazy.
we've seen it. But those pictures help us learn more about the houses
Yeah.
that we're dealing with by their age, by their century, by their materials that were built,
Yeah.
from the architect who built it to the region of the county that it was in, where the materials came from. So this process is extensive in that whenever we find out, we can go back in before those things happen and take those kind of photographs.
Yeah.
So,
I'm so sorry, because I know there was an extraordinary mason on site.
It was.
Yes, and that's how I learned about this, because that's somebody that I'm familiar with, very close to, and
It was crazy. We even, before we demoed the other part, we
That's
were
too
so worried
bad.
about the chimney. Bob dismantled the chimney because we didn't want it
I was
falling
afraid it would
over.
fall over.
Because
Right.
it had no structure to it, and it was going to be replaced back. It was like,
yeah, you have to almost create an exoskeleton on a building like that before you do anything to it, because anything you do is going to change the dynamics of the building, and that's hard to know. So,
close that out. I don't know if we have questions.
yeah, just,
Do you have any additional questions that you'd like to ask?
no, I'm okay.
Bill, did you have any additional comments for the?
Oh, I do have one comment.
Yeah, please.
If you would like us to take a look at your plans, just to offer any kind of insight or knowledge or anything with regards to how you're going to put the house back together again,
okay,
like Humpty Dumpty,
okay.
we'd be more than pleased to offer, to take a look at it and speak to
Absolutely.
you. It's not about getting our opinion, but just to maybe help you with your process if that's
And
something you
hearing
need.
that Mr. Porter wanted to do the right thing by the house, I was curious about the barn.
The barn, yeah,
Is it done or not done yet? Because,
Porter?
I mean, in terms of the design, I mean, I think it's great that he's going to be fixing it. That's terrific. I think it's, because it's an important, there aren't that many 18th century farm buildings left.
Yeah.
But in terms of the drawing, which is in the materials, is that, what's that based on? Is that, I
We
mean,
actually don't have purview over the property, so we're not really.
no, I'm just curious.
But we can't really discuss it.
Oh, we can't even discuss
It's
their
not in our
design?
purview to do that.
No, we haven't been asked to do so.
Okay.
Because
this
it's a
point,
public
I do have a
meeting.
question.
Yeah.
I do have a question, one question. Can you tell me who the structural engineer was?
Jay Silcox.
Jay was? Okay.
Yeah. John, this is Porter Durham. You should feel free anytime to come out and look at the barns. Both of them have been completed. The 1930s era dairy barn, which was caving in inside, it's now back to rights.
Looks great.
And the original 1750 brick barn is now back to rights. It was caving into its left side because of the 1930s hayloft that had been put on top of it. We removed that top and then restored the original, using the original brick. Jonas Jonas the Brick Mason did that work, and he did
Miller.
beautiful work.
Yeah, he does a great job.
And
One
so
of the
feel
best.
free to come out and take a look.
It sounds
anytime.
like you're working with some great people. I was just curious if from the drawing, because I'm just interested in 18th century design, if someone advised you on the roof line and the like.
Yeah, John Hutchinson
Okay, thank you.
did the drawings for that property, for that structure. And they did a beautiful job. I mean, it obviously isn't perfectly back to rights, but it's as close as we could get it.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And one last request, when you guys finish, we do all this to update the land records. We'd love to come out and photograph
Sure.
it completely finished and
Yeah.
that, the
Yeah,
fresh record
We've been
of.
documenting everything. We've got, we're actually droning everything. That way it will be used for generations and generations to have.
And if I could ask a favor, which is, it's a coming attraction. We're not there yet, but the Perkins family cemetery is still on the property. It's behind the home, and it has I believe nine graves. The oldest dating to the late 1700s.
Is that William,
so
is that Williams Perkins family?
These are Daniel Perkinses.
Oh, okay,
Daniel was William's brother, I believe.
okay.
But we are going to restore the footprint of the family graveyard. And it's the gravestones are now on the ground. They're laying there. One of them having broken. And my thinking is that we're going to need to somehow shore that up because the stones are actually sinking into the graves. So at some point, I would love to have the wisdom of this group as to how best to achieve that result.
Well,
That'd be great. We'd be happy to do that for you.
let's talk, because I personally take care of a community graveyard of a similar age. And I've worked with contractors who've restored stones and righted them.
Terrific.
They're
Yep.
not, they have to wait for them,
And
but that's great.
There's a whole body of work out there, Porter. We used it when I used to steward the Colonial Cemetery at White House.
Yes,
For restoring those stones and how it's done. So there's a lot of information that we can provide you,
terrific.
what kind of solutions to use, materials, interventions. And there's a really fantastic mason who actually, all of us, Jonas and everybody, we all sort of hold him in great homage, whose work it is to work with these kinds of stones, these particular types of materials which disintegrate.
They do. They're melting.
They melt over time. So there are tricks to this. So yeah, we would love to help you with that.
Terrific.
Porter, in the spring, we're going to be hosting an on-site at a grave site in Bennett Point in Queenstown. And if anybody in the family or involved in the project would like to join us that day, they can watch that process as well, so you can see it firsthand before you utilize the resources.
Terrific. Thank you.
I will also say, just as a side note, that William Perkins and his wife are buried over on Urieville Mill. And their stones can be seen at the edge of the wood line as it hits Judd Road, just past that. If you look down the wood line, his brother and his wife are buried right there, and they have these fabulous 18th century stones. Incredible.
Interesting.
Yeah, you can kind of see it from the road when the foliage is right. Yeah. Yeah.
Any questions or comments that you'd like to leave with us before we go? We really appreciate you coming out and taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Porter.
It was nice to get, for everybody to know what's kind of going on that way
Yeah.
and the intent of everything, so.
Yeah, we wanted to have the conversation and just flesh it out and make sure, our job is, as we see it, is not to make people's lives difficult. It's actually to try and be of great assistance.
Right.
And protect what's important to all of us.
Yeah. No, I
So,
agree.
thank you. Thank
Max,
you
did
very
you have
much.
any questions? Max?
Do I have any questions? No.
Yes, okay, thank
I'm
you.
good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Next on the agenda is the Cypress Branch Dam Removal Project. Bill, can you relay for us specifically
No,
what
it's-
you need us to decide on this evening?
So you all, this, basically, there is an MOU. That MOU has gone through a review process and consultation. They're at the end, this is the final draft, and just if there's any comments by HPC members about this particular document, I'm happy to convey those to Mr. Vidal, who was the one, he made the presentation on August 30th about the project. So this is just, if you have any comments you want to make, I'll forward it to him.
Well, I spoke with him offline,
Good.
because I'd gone out to see the site, and I talked to other people in Millington. And my principal concern was in reading the materials, which aren't here, that if you eliminate the dam, well, there were several concerns. They talked about opening up a spawning area for river herring, and first of all, I didn't know what a river herring was. But the way it was written, it said that there were river herring observed down on the Chester River, without saying where it was. And so it wasn't clear to me that the river herring were actually coming up to that dam anyway. But he said that, although it's not written, that there were actually herring observed north of the dam, upstream of the dam, and could get there through the breach. He also said that the dam was in such bad condition that in the next hurricane, it could open up altogether. And so, while this is an initiative by the Fish and Wildlife Service to open up passageways for fish spawning, and while the herring is not an endangered fish, it's a priority fish, whatever that means, they've got tiers. My concern was, well, that was all well and good, but this was a 1763 dam, and we shouldn't just assume that they had done the investigation. I came away convinced that they had done a good faith investigation, that this will benefit wildlife, that the dam isn't practically salvageable in any case. But I still had other questions, like, if you remove a dam, then the pond can disappear. If the pond disappears, what happens upstream of that? If I were a property owner on an upstream dam, on an upstream pond, and you removed the dam farther downstream, would my pond disappear over time so that my property value would be damaged? And he said that the upstream portion from the dam that they were concerned about was 18 miles, which boggles my mind. I can't think how it could possibly be 18 miles. But I guess these little fish can get up little tiny waterways. And he said that they were fairly confident that it wouldn't impact any property owners upstream who are on other dams. Now, it's a little confusing because when you go into the Cypress State Park, there's a parking lot and a sign that shows the state park, and this is all included within the state park. And I was concerned that the pond that you see right there on 313 would disappear as well. But he told me, no, that's actually fed by there's a different creek, and it's approximate, but it's not the same. So he assured me that pond would not disappear, because the state park, the recreation area without the pond is not nearly the same. So even though it is, I guess, a mill pond, and even though it has a house right up next to it, I'm told by him that it's not in danger, and I took him to be credible. So I'm okay with the dam being removed, but I just wanted to make sure that nobody was being harmed. And I guess the dam is pretty well, nobody can find it anyway. It's like way back in the place that you try to find it if you want, but you can't find it.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to find.
Yeah.
I have a question. So, Maryland Historical Trust found that there is an adverse effect to the dam by removing the dam. I mean, it's a little bit of a redundancy.
Sure.
Do we have, we have a copy of a signed MOA in this packet, or an unsigned MOA. Have they signed off? Is the Maryland Historical Trust requiring any kind of mitigation, documentation? What do they plan to do with regards to, and it is eligible for a listing in the National Register, so it would be my opinion, it is my opinion that while the dam itself, the structure, I don't know how much of it is original, probably not much, but MHT would know if that has been documented and, people have been out there, whether it's from Fish and Wildlife or MHT, they had to document it in order to have a finding of adverse effect under Section 106. So have they signed an MOA, and is there any mitigation effort to like put a sign, do something that speaks to it, actually make it listed on the National Register? Even if it's gone, it can be listed.
I can't answer all those questions. I do know the plan includes interpretive signage to talk about the mill, and they're working on that. This document is unsigned because it was the last draft and sort of the last call for comments, and that's why it went out to you all. And, the time for comments, it was going to be before this meeting, so that's why I had recommended individual members reach out if
Sure.
they had comments, because as an individual member, it's not, affecting quorum or the board's action, so. But I can't answer those questions. I can certainly ask Mr. Vidal those questions and see what the responses are. I imagine by now that this might be a signed document, but it wasn't when we received it. And again, it was sort of the last call for comments if there were any, but I can ask about that.
I don't have any problem personally with the demolition of the dam, but I do think that the view shed and potentially the cultural landscape around it that was created by man's intervention with the land, created enhanced the race, enhanced the mill ponds, that's all affected by the creation and construction of this dam. So I'd like to ask, Madam Chair, if they would require that those documents be provided to us, that it's made known to us what the extent of the mitigation is, if there are any plans for the site to be listed under Criterion A of National Park Service standards, and the extent of the signage. And if the signage is so buried so far back in the woods, I know they have plans to do trails in that park. I'm a Millington resident. I'm really excited about this park. And so do any of those trails access that signage, or is it a sign in the woods?
So I'll certainly ask that question, and my vague recall is, I think they talked about the interpretation being at the parking lot you were talking about.
Yeah, and I would say with regard to that, I don't know if they're charged with that now, but there's a sign up there now which is completely unreadable.
Yeah, it's completely unreadable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very hard to read.
And
But
if
they're just starting out. They're going to get it straightened
And
out.
most of those parks have those first boards, so when you get there, you
Yeah.
actually see what's available to you to go view
Sure.
and walk inside, so.
Yeah. So we would want that dam to, the history, some piece of that to be included in, if it's not already, or more extensively in the amended signage.
I saw a picture of the dam
Please.
in one of the documents I looked at, and there was lots of cement and iron and metal rods and not 18th century stuff. I guess it was, there was comment that it was repaired in like 1900, and I guess
Yeah.
probably not since.
Yeah, probably so. And it's, as you said, it's sort of obscure. But I think that what happened there is really notable and important. So we
Make sure
want
that
to,
there's the signage,
we want to, well, yeah, we
including
want
where
to.
you can find it once it's gone, that you can walk back there and there's not just some bit.
Well, it'd be weird if you walk out in the woods and there's just a sign there and there's like
Oh,
no trail. You'd be like,
and I think what pond is there is going to disappear. It's going to become wetlands. But there'll
I
be
think
a-
it's
but there'll-
tidal.
but
It's
there'll
gonna
be-
become-
There'll be a stream.
It'll have a
that they-
movement.
there'll be one single stream that moves through it.
yeah. Well,
Thank you.
thank you.
So I think based on that, we're going to find out about the signage, we're going to find out about the, having it on the register, having it listed.
Yeah, seeing, like, has there been any discussion about actually listing it? I mean, it's now determined eligible, and that stands that's notable in and of itself. So they're going to say, well, who's going to pay to have it listed on the National Register? But I'm curious to see what MHT's report on, I think that it would be very beneficial for the county whenever there is an action taken by the state in the county. It triggers, as we know, a number of different departments: archaeology, state roads, fish and wildlife. All within those departments, I guess, or there are the divisions, departments, that they have architectural historians, they have people who specialize in these subjects, and they go out and make these determinations. And they generate reports. And those reports are typically held at the state level or Maryland Historical Trust. We can request a copy of that report, because that will tell us what the interpretation is on a professional level of the area and the way in which they made that determination, which gives us a lot of history that's already been done about our county that we don't have. And it helps with future decisions that we have to make that impact that area, because Millington is under major development pressure, and it's happening. So
Yeah.
we need to know this. All right. And it can be a digital report. The county doesn't have to house paper, but I think we could get a copy of it.
I want
I
to
know.
talk, just as an aside, in talking to Fish and Wildlife people, I asked them about development in Millington and about the warehouses abutting the creek, Mill Creek, that's running there. And they said they could look into it for us.
Little town of Millington. All right, any more comments about the Cypress Dam? Max, did you have any comments regarding the
I do
dam?
not. Nope.
So does something like this require a vote?
We haven't made a motion to do anything. We've only requested
Well, they
information.
want to comment. So when the commission makes comment, does it require a vote of the commission to make a comment?
No, because there's no actionable item on the table. We're not voting to approve or not approve the demolition of the dam. It's not our decision really to make. They're only here for comment. The reason it's not our decision to make is because it is not a property that we have purview over.
No, but they've asked us a question, and so
Yeah.
so they deserve an answer. And so when they get an answer, does it have the letterhead of the commission on it? And if so, when any correspondence like that goes out, does that require a vote?
It depends on the action.
Because this is
William, can you speak to that,
So
please?
if to say we have no objection.
Right.
Then that's a statement. Does that
I didn't
require
think we had
a
any
vote?
purview over this. I didn't think we had any purview over this decision.
We do not have purview over the decision. We've been requested to make comment, just like MHT or any local stakeholder. And, by virtue of our commission, they would take that comment into consideration. It is a little bit past comment time, so I don't think that, because if we were determining whether that dam was going to be demolished or not, then we would vote on that. But there's no vote to request information.
No, but there is a request for a statement, do you have, it's a yes or no, maybe.
Or-
Yes, we're okay with it, no, we're not.
If you would like to make a motion to that effect?
I'm just curious about the regular
The
procedures.
other piece is no answer is an answer. So if there were comments to
Yes.
make, comments would have been made, and if they've reached the deadline and they saw no comments from us, meaning we go through Bill for those comments, then they would know that there were comments.
Yeah, but I
So-
think they're still waiting at this point, based on my conversation.
Okay. That I
So we can check on that. I think it's legitimate to ask. Can you ask that question when you speak to them? Yep.
Again, but again.
You could take,
just- But we're not going to
motion.
meet again. My question is, does that, from a
direct me to do
process
that.
point of
Right.
view, does, when someone asks this body an opinion or an answer to a question, does it require, and whether there could be any possible controversy about it, which there could someday be, I suppose, does it require a vote or not? And if you're saying no, then okay. But I would think
So I
But in
think
this case,
Cindy's
it's,
suggesting you could make a motion to direct me to do what you want me to do, if you want to do that. I mean, the board can always make a motion about any action.
Yeah,
You know,
of
you
course.
propose a motion,
do it.
if it receives a second, you vote on it. So, I mean, you can
And
always
Because
do
you
your
have a
action.
disagreement among
Right.
the members,
Yes,
so that's the point.
and all of it goes in the meeting minutes, so there is representation that we had the conversation,
Right.
if we do
It's
that.
public.
Yeah.
It's public.
I make a motion that we request that the planning office request, how do we want to word this? Make sure we do it correctly.
Well, you have to, in order to make a motion, you have to have a finding of fact, right?
Not necessarily, no.
Not necessarily?
You're not making a
So I would
decision.
say that you make a motion that standing members of, present members of the Historic Preservation Commission take no issue. We do not oppose the demolition of this dam, of the Cypress Creek Dam, K-170 in the K files for Kent County and the Maryland, and the MIHP, Maryland Inventory of Historic Properties, that we don't oppose the demolition of that dam, that we request further documentation. We'd like to see the signed MOA for our records from the Maryland Historical Trust, that if there was a report generated by subsequent agencies who interacted with this site, Maryland Historical Trust, Fish and Wildlife, or anybody else, that a copy of that report be provided to our county, to the staff at our planning office for our records, and that we can review it. So we have that information. And, did I say signage?
sign, you didn't, but I think you should.
That we'd like to know, to follow up with us, that there will be adequate signage
Yeah,
noting
appropriate signage.
noting the dam, and that it was listed, that it was determined to be eligible for listing on the National Register under Criterion A. It doesn't have to say Criterion A, but it was eligible for listing under the National Register of Historic Places. I think
That's a major motion.
that's a major motion, Max. I make major motions.
Thank you, I was documenting while you were
I was
talking.
trying to, the motion is probably that we take no opposition to the demolition of the dam,
That's
Right.
the of that, yes.
Right.
and the rest is comment.
Okay,
How about that?
okay.
Great.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
I'm
agree.
gonna
Do you have
be
a
quiet
second?
now.
I second that motion, and all of that electronically.
I second
Yes,
that
ma'am.
motion.
Are you going to call the vote?
She did.
All in
Oh.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay,
The nays,
thank
that's
you all.
the thing.
Sorry for the long-winded motion. I just got going.
Thank you, Joe. All right, our last order of business on the agenda is the Tri-Leaf Section 106 review of the Rock Hall Water Tower.
And this is simply a request as whether you want to be, the term, do you want to be considered a consulting party for this item?
Yes.
Because the deadline was before our meeting, I did reach out by email, that email is included in the packet, to let them know this is an initial response, that we would like to be considered a consulting party after I consult with you all. So to sort of, put a pin in it and hold
Thank
it.
you.
And then you all could decide if you wanted to keep that or not, and I can follow up.
I think that'd be great. Now, but I would agree with that, but aren't they going to want to have an answer? I mean, what's the next step in that case?
I think they put us on a mailing list and we receive information as
So
the
they're not in a
process
big hurry to
unfolds.
get this done?
That I can't tell you, but my understanding of consulting party is there's a regular outreach at particular steps in the 106 process, and you have an ability to comment. So this is really, do we want to be on that list?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We would always want to be on that list.
And the issue that we would be concerned about is whether whether it somehow impairs the view shed or whatever.
Whether it has an adverse effect
On another
on
property.
National Register resources within a certain perimeter of the tower, and has its impact on the cultural landscape been properly evaluated?
Right.
That would be our comment.
I see no impact for this addition to the water tower. It's a very narrow antenna.
And it's 13 feet high, I think, which is like pretty small.
At the base, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not, but it is good to be part of the process.
And Bill, do you want us, in the spirit of the last one, do you want us to make a brief motion that says to do this to you?
If you wish to do so, that'd be great.
I'd like to make a motion that the planning office and staff advise the Tri-Leaf Environmental Architectural Engineering Firm that the HPC does wish to be added as a consultant and all communication regarding the project,
Consulting party.
consulting party on the project. The rest of it goes down. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Who
You
seconded?
need a second.
I
We
missed
need a
that.
second.
Okay. Thank you.
That would be this.
All righty.
Bill, can I add 2 items for like a new business, or just whether we move it to the next one, or we just talk about it? So this is the same communication. We get communications in other counties about the telecommunication towers that go up
Yes.
from all the firms. But do we get them here? Have we started to get any of, I don't know that I've seen any of those come to the HPC in this county.
We did a huge one years ago with Verizon and Still Pond.
Yeah, okay.
Did they ever build that, by the way?
Yeah.
Did they build that?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
Yeah, they did, and it wasn't terrible.
And is that technically in our purview as an HPC to get a notice like that, to do the same thing this is saying, basically, is they have a similar language with regard to their impact on the surrounding area and things like that?
Yes, yes.
Who makes that?
The cultural landscape is part of the purview. It's the, you know, for easements or for creating a district, you can have a single building, but when you're talking about the surrounding view shed, that has to be interpreted and evaluated. So this is minor. It's also reversible, which is something to be considered when a tower like this is going up.
I was thinking of the communication tower, so this has been settled, but I
Right.
haven't seen, I don't know that we've ever had any,
We
like
sh-
phone towers come into us since we've been here.
We have not in the
In this
last,
county.
we've had, not in the last 7 or 8 years have we
That's
seen
several.
that.
Yeah.
That's what it says. Okay.
So how does that come to us then? They'd be coming to the county then for a building permit, so that, then we would learn through that?
They're required to reach out to us as an
Public Service
organization.
Commission has
I would probably
requirements
get an
for-
email as director notifying me that this was a, Section 106 review, do we want to be a consulting party? I think the reason we haven't received those is there hasn't been a tower
Yeah.
in all those years, right?
Yeah, there hasn't been
They've
one.
been 30 miles north of here.
Yeah, we
Or
haven't had a
east,
tower.
west, or south of here.
We did have something, but we had the wind turbines.
Okay.
That was-
But the way these things all have to sort of be funneled is that you will always be aware of them because there will be a building permit request. And therefore, we wouldn't necessarily have any other way of knowing.
No,
They-
that's
they-
not true. That's not true, because before they're going to build something like that, Section 106 requires that they look at local stakeholders and make sure that they ask people's opinion and give you an opportunity to chime in on the process, and then become a consulting party to the process. An individual person can be a consulting party if they want to. As a commission, we can do that. So when the county gets, and it's solar fields as well, if there's a request that comes into the county that somebody wants to build a solar field and it's adjacent to a historic structure or somewhere within a particular distance that we're asked to comment. And we have done that before as well. And we've had fences erected, we've had all kinds of things done.
So on
That
that,
goes to planning. You know, our comments go to planning, and then the commissioners can look at it and act on it
Right.
or not, correct?
Yes, and the process doesn't necessarily involve the building permit process. For example, the building permit would actually be with the town of Rock Hall, so I would never see it. So that's why there's that separate notification.
Right.
Yeah, and with the towers, we get them directly from the engineering firms who are putting them up, or the communication firms.
Right, and because there's a federal piece to this, because it's a tower, a communications tower, this one, they're required by law to do a Section 106 process.
Okay.
yeah, well, I'm going to bring up a related one. As I read the materials, this commission has purview, has responsibilities to review structures, but also the cultural landscape, and that term's been used in this meeting already. And that can just include landscaping, for instance, well, I'll give you an example. We can't make things happen, we can express opinions. So one of the issues that I haven't heard the commission's voice on is the Clark Farm and the Morg Neck Solar Project, which we can't prevent. The state says it can be there, but the Planning Commission and the Planning Department can impose landscaping standards in keeping with policies throughout the county for other developments. And this is an important property because it's one of the gateways to Chestertown. I mean,
And the county actually has very specific standards just for solar facilities, developed actually in conjunction with KCPA.
right, so my
So
concern.
those would actually be the standards that we would apply.
But I've seen different proposals from the developer in which there's an effort, understandably, to minimize costs. And this is such an important avenue into the county that I would like to see the Historic Preservation Commission, it's too late to be a consulting party, I guess, but I would like to make it known to the Planning Commission that the minimum standards, as I understand them now, the minimum installation, as I understand it now, that the developer is proposing, which is less than what the county generally demands, should be reviewed critically by the Planning Commission. In other words, it has to go in, but it should be properly landscaped. And what we've seen in other solar landscaping around the county is it's very minimal. It's unacceptable to me in most cases, but in this case, we do have an opportunity, at least, to express an opinion. The Planning Commission ought to ask for more.
I don't honestly know if we do have an opportunity to express an opinion, because legally, we don't have any purview or review of a resource that has been designated, determined, or even questioned about being historical. Now, if you're talking about the cultural landscape, you have to look at that as a resource, and we would have to determine that there is something there that needs to be protected.
Yes.
So what you're probably after is, we can't comment on landscaping unless it's something that we're reviewing.
Right.
Or have been asked to review.
Yes.
But we could ask to have the gateway to Chestertown. We could see if it's possible to do an assessment of that gateway to see if it is a cultural landscape. And if it is, then we would want them to take all measures to mitigate an adverse effect of that solar plant to surrounding resources through proper landscaping, et cetera.
So maybe that's all I'm asking. I'm asking, I think, that the Historical Commission say to the Planning Commission that they should do that, what you just said.
Okay,
That
did
this-
somebody write
in
that
other
down?
words-
Because I don't think I can.
In other words,
I-
more voice, the county commissioners are responsive to public voices. The Planning Commission will listen, and there's this opposite pressure by the developer to do as little as possible. And we have, I think, the right and responsibility as a community, I'm not talking about as a commission, to do what's in the long-term interest of the town and the county, if we can.
Is that solar field under any requirement for review? Who reviews that?
Planning Commission by site plan.
Okay,
And although there's pressure, John, as you say, the developer will certainly want to save costs. I mean, part of staff's job is to ensure that what they present in the drawings meets the requirements of the code. The
Exactly.
planning commission doesn't actually see documents until they have met all the requirements of the code.
But the planning commission will presumably see a design.
Yeah, they'll see
I
it,
mean, I've got,
concept, preliminary, and final, right.
I've got,
I'm sorry, because I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was very interested in what you had to say. No problem.
Well, I mean, it doesn't, nothing with respect to that application goes to you automatically. But if you as a commission were to decide, well, we really want to look at this, and if it were, I don't know, is that an historic gateway into the town? Is
We
it
would have to look at
designated or
it. I mean,
formally?
part of, yeah,
If
I
it
mean,
was
I
something
could
you
go out
would
and look
normally
at
look
it.
at, and
You'd
you
have-
voted that you wanted to send a comment, just like any other member of the public, as a body, you could do that, I
Sure we could.
suppose, yeah.
The other thing too is we could, but I'm wondering, like, was there, I'm a little out of my depth on this one. So, solar panels, it's been a while. Is there a section 106 review of anything like that to determine adverse effect? Is there any adverse effect determined by anyone on that kind of an action?
So I believe the applicant, as part of their initial CPCN application, included a letter from MHT that there was no impact.
There you go.
So similar to our.
That's it. That's where it ends.
I mean, I happen to be familiar with this. Of course, there was one of the oldest houses in the county there until 20 years ago. But, and it did, what they did is they did spot, excavations. And we know that that farm has been a farmstead since the 1720s, if not earlier. And they, in my opinion, they didn't do the best job, but they did what they did, and there's been a certification to that effect. I'm less concerned, frankly, that they're going to be destroying that, which will be destroyed, but that's water under the dam, than worried about the future appearance, aesthetic, and attractiveness of Chestertown and the county. If a developer is left to do the least he can possibly do. And in this case, the drawing I've seen is about the least they could do. And so I think that we should at least express to the planning commission that we would hope for more. And the developer, I would hope, would be somewhat responsible for it.
So John, the
I seriously doubt we could make them do more than necessary, that's required.
No, unfortunately, the way the
I
state
think there-
works, we can't make
I think
them.
there's an assumption
but-
being made, and that is that when Williams before said that, is the plan that we've seen the final approved plan? Okay, so this is a proposition that they've put on the table, unlike most developers, right? They come out with letter A, their first go, and they have B, C, D, E, F, G, the whole alphabet
Right.
behind it, and they just want to see what you'll bite, right, Max?
Yep.
And so this has been presented to planning, and planning will look at it and say, this is not up to snuff, it doesn't meet our code, which has been approved, so they will
Right.
recommend changes to those plans, correct?
Yeah, they can't proceed to the planning commission until they meet code.
Does that make you feel better?
No, well, I understand what Bill's saying, and I agree with that. I'm just saying that having been engaged through KCPA in this for the last 5 years, since it's been on the table, that there has been an ebb and flow in terms of how much the developer has been willing to offer in terms of as the aesthetics. And
We can't, as a commission, we can't comment on aesthetics.
well, we
Let
can.
me stop you here for a second, because you really have to look at what the ordinance says about your powers and duties.
Yeah.
So, if there's a application within a designated historic site, structure, or district, or which has preservation easements, then it says you have some input into the review for a special exception or a variance or a site plan. So it starts there with an
Yeah.
historic designation. Other than that, I think you have to operate as, you're subject to the Open Meetings Act. You would have to, in accordance with your bylaws or procedures, ask to have an agenda item placed on the agenda for your next meeting and have a discussion with your members to see whether that's something you even want to weigh in on, if you can.
Yeah, sure.
So if you can, put it on the agenda. If you really don't have a voice in the process, then you're really operating like
I thought I read,
any other public commenter.
as I thought I read the,
You have to vote on that.
it's called the comprehensive plan write-up, and there's associated documents, as I read them, this commission is within its charge to comment on virtually anything concerning the cultural landscape, the cultural history of this county. And I can't think of many more important sites in that respect, quite aside from the fact that there may have been an early 18th century farm on that site. It's gone. But what isn't gone is we should be doing what we can. I would like to do what I can to preserve the tourist attractiveness and the cultural, the general aesthetic of the county. And if this commission can in any way nudge the county commissioners or the planning commission to not roll over, now maybe you say it's not necessary, they won't do it anyway, but not roll over, that's a value added. But to be silent is to have added no value in that respect.
If I could just ask a clarifying question. So you've attended many, many planning commission meetings, as have I. Have you ever seen our planning commission roll over?
No,
I certainly have not.
No, I'm not saying you have. I'm saying, but you know that this has been on the table for 5 years.
I think that individual members of this commission are certainly welcome and open to make comment on their own with regards to this and for whatever reason. As a commission, I think it's very important that we pick our battles carefully and that what we ask the commissioners for are things that are really important. And while this is important, the way that you're going to make it really important is that question's already been answered. The Maryland Historical Trust has already done a review and provided comment that there is no adverse effect. They have evaluated the surrounding resources, they have looked at the photography, and they have made this determination based on a legal standard. That is a very difficult thing for us to argue, but we can certainly encourage the commissioners, and I think we would have to do it outside the purview of this commission. That's my opinion, I could be wrong.
No, I agree, individually, because as a group, we can only do
Agreed.
so much without getting together in this open meeting forum. We have very serious standards that we have to
I
maintain.
think it's important too. I agree with you
No, I-
that these things should be protected, but it doesn't fall legally within our realm at this time to make comment on that.
The other piece of this is that the HPZ is not meant to be stagnant. It's left for us to grow and expand what it is that we talk about, what we review.
Absolutely.
And we only learn those from examples like we've talked about today. Because we have a lot of demo permits that are just sort of standard practice, and we review. We've had several today that give us an example of how much we all still learn from when something happens in the process we go through. And that, if anything, I'll leave it to, this meeting was essential because there were also a lot of conclusions that were jumped to publicly, and that as a group, we should make sure that we don't do that in the future.
Yeah.
Because that jeopardizes this entire system that we have working. And in the time that we've all worked together, we have very successful interactions with the people that we
We have
answer to.
always, we have always done that
for our
since
demo permits.
since our first,
So I'm
Meeting.
going to, I have a very specific recommendation in that respect. It's been 9 months since the last meeting. And it was 3 months prior to that, and there were only 4 committee members who were present then, according to the minutes. There is so much in here that we could be doing, if, for whatever reason, hasn't happened in the past, I'm sure with good reason.
COVID
But it
didn't
could be,
help.
didn't know it.
Well, and
But if we scheduled regular meetings, so we wouldn't always be, maybe the meeting is called monthly but canceled, at the last minute. But if we had posted monthly meeting dates going out a year, and everybody knew when they were, then you'd have limited excuses for not making it.
What do the bylaws say about number?
It says regular meetings.
Just regular?
The bylaws is set up to create an HPC meeting preceding planning commission meeting so that if there are items
Yeah,
that you would comment on, but since really it's 7 properties, I think that just hasn't, those meetings haven't been set up for those reasons.
The other thing to take into consideration is this is actually a very active HPC, because while there hasn't been a meeting to go over a specific
Right.
item.
You do a lot of work.
There's a ton of hours going on behalf of the HPC. And I don't disagree with you that there would be times where we can come in and the agenda could be just us. That's a doable thing, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah,
It
and
it doesn't
it's,
have to be a demo permit on the thing, it could be just
right,
us
and we
talking.
have,
We've done
we
that
have a
before.
staff that has a certain capacity, and that capacity also changes over time.
Yep.
So I think in consideration of what their capacity is and their shifts internally, that I would say, look, if we haven't had a meeting in 4 months, we need to have a meeting. If we haven't had a meeting in 3 months, we should hold a meeting. We could do a training. But to just schedule and cancel, to me, looks worse
It
than,
would be hard for us
than
as
not,
staff
than
to know.
scheduling and having, and nailing it. Like, we want to be very,
But
very surgical in how we do things.
I absolutely, I don't disagree with any of that, but I would say this, there's so much that we could be doing.
And we can be doing those things.
But not if we can't talk to one another outside the meeting format, not if we have, you know,
That's not an HPC decision for us to make, that's actually part of the open meetings criteria.
that's what I'm saying. If we
That's what
can't
the
be
state-
talking to one another
The open
because
meetings
of,
criteria would be an excellent thing, for, especially for new members, because it's hard to understand unless you've had to deal with it.
And actually, in order to meet you, one of you needs to be trained in OMA and certified as a member. The law changed. Staff can't do that role anymore. So somebody will have to be chosen as your OMA
I can do that.
trainee.
what does that mean?
Open Meetings Act,
I know what that means, but what do you mean? What do
You
you
take an
have to-
online class and you answer questions, and basically you're sort of the guardian of the OMA for that group. And each one of our boards has to have a member certified. It used to be that staff could play that role, but we can't anymore.
So, but what do I do now? Let's suppose,
I'll do it.
let's suppose I,
too hard for me
I
already.
learn of something,
It's not hard.
Facebook or otherwise, that I felt like really should be, or to be discussed. How do I do that?
And you can send it to Jeremy, but we can't, as a group, get on a group email and start discussing the project.
We then have to wait until the next meeting.
We schedule.
So,
It's because as a
Yeah.
commission, we have a police power.
You can't email as a group and have effectively an online
No,
meeting.
you cannot, you can't.
And if you want to look more in depth at that, if you go to the Maryland Attorney General's website, there's an entire handbook on the Open Meetings Act, and it'll give you an analysis of what is considered a meeting and what is not. and how to
all right, so
handle
let's
that.
suppose there's a new law passed in Massachusetts, and I read about it, there's an article. May I or may I not attach it and send it to the commission?
Send it to staff.
Staff.
And then as a
That's why we
staff
have
member,
staff.
I can share it with the commission as your staff.
Okay, so that's the way you do it.
Yeah,
And
he'll
that's how the planning
disseminate
commission
it.
does
We
it.
can have conversation. We've had this through staff before, so that's all observed. And then if we determine that we need to have a meeting, we schedule a meeting. And you can also publicize that you want to have a meeting like on a Saturday. And, you just have to put it in the paper and let people know that we're having a meeting.
I'd request that you not have too many Saturday meetings.
No,
I wanted to have Sunday meetings, but everyone said no Saturday meetings.
Elizabeth,
But I'm just,
we generally-
hesitant, just saying.
Go ahead,
We
Max.
generally don't draw too much attention from the public.
Yeah, this is true.
what's that?
We generally don't draw too much attention from the public.
No,
They may be
well,
watching, but they
obvious.
don't generally
We want to
show
draw
up.
more attention from the public in a good way.
Yes, yeah.
So, yeah, yes.
So it's the case that you haven't had that many meetings because there haven't been that many matters to really review.
Yes.
No, it's been
But what
quiet.
about the notion of initiatives created by the commission? So an initiative could be, how do we set about to get more than 7 properties on the county's list? I mean, we should have an objective. The objective should be, we want, maybe achievable or not, 100 properties.
So, John,
How do we do that?
we have 10 minutes. I want to make the most of the list that you want. So of those items for the next agenda, for example, go ahead, go
Oh,
with your list.
I hadn't made up a list yet.
No, I mean, just the things you're thinking about right now.
I'm thinking in terms of time sensitivity, whether and if we want to comment on the Morgneck Solar, in terms of input. But in a longer term, create initiatives to better publicize and work with homeowner or property owners to
We
help
don't have
them.
a budget.
Go ahead,
We don't
Max.
have a budget to spend money.
Yeah, we
I
don't
don't think
have
we
a
have a
budget. There is no budget for us, which is one reason why many
Well,
things
we
don't.
don't get paid.
We
Yeah.
do get paid.
We get paid?
Yes, we do.
This is
$25 a meeting.
Yep. That's part of the member, that's part of the sign-in. You
One
get
of
a
the things
check.
that you
Can
could do
I
is you
waive
could.
my $25?
You may.
You can actually make it, you can vote to donate your money back to the kitty. There's a way to do it, I think.
Generally, if
let's
money's
not talk
unspent,
about
it
it
just
now.
goes back to the general fund, but yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
okay. And I do have a staff report, Madam Chair, before we're done, just to.
All right, so I'm very interested in adding to the list, to the Kent County Historical Properties list.
Great.
And I think we should set a business plan for achieving that.
Okay. You like that idea?
Yeah, I
Max?
do. And we all have other
Certainly
ideas
worth a
too, so.
look.
Go ahead, Max, I'm sorry.
I said it's certainly worth a look.
Yeah.
To see if it can be done.
I think it could be done.
And I think any number of us probably have ideas that we could entertain while we're talking, to talk about the life and how we.
So why don't we schedule
So
another
have-
meeting right now?
So you would put it on your agenda for your next meeting as a discussion item, and the point of that is to let the public know that that's what you're gonna be discussing.
Yes.
Because then members of the public can come in and weigh
Yeah.
in and.
And then all of our items go to the county, and then Bill will make sure that we get all the things within the agenda on his official email, and that will be made to the public.
This is the type of thing that'd be great to have public input on. Now, I don't know whether you have to give them something to comment on. We don't have a free-for-all, but somehow you've got to
I think you
start
have
the
it's a
process.
multi-pronged approach.
Yeah, but it's not something you're going to get done in a month or even a year necessarily.
No, but we could schedule a meeting for 2 months from now.
Yeah.
And there's some things to follow up on, or a month from now, or whatever, and we could make that part of the content of that meeting.
Yes.
So there's a reason to have it.
Are you aware of the Association of Historic District Commissions?
Yes.
American Association?
The county pays for a membership for the
Oh,
board.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been certified by them to train commissions.
I have a really simple question, in that respect. The Chester Town has a very active historical commission.
Who knows that? Nobody.
Do we have any connection with them, or was anything that happens in town off limits?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, is that written somewhere?
We only operate in unincorporated areas of the
Okay.
town.
That's
Of
the
the county.
jurisdiction
There's a
of the county.
legal
I didn't
specification.
see that
for
written
the
in the materials he gave us. But that's what I was guessing.
Right, yeah, it does vary from county to county, but in this county, all five municipalities enjoy zoning authority, so they are separate from us. We have no purview in their
No, that's not, I don't mean
jurisdiction.
zoning, but is it only, are we only engaged where there's a zoning issue, or is there, or it's
Really serve
broader
the
than that?
county,
Right.
yeah.
Right, but I mean,
Unincorporated
does that mean we
county.
don't serve Millington?
No, we don't.
Okay,
The town serves Millington.
but does Millington have a historical commission? Probably doesn't, right?
No, it does not.
Does not.
It's also a reason why, separate from this individually, there's a lot of photographs that get taken all over the county and then turned into Bill and Mark and Rob to add to the file. So at the very least, we get the purview of taking some photographs to make sure that if things.
Yeah.
That includes the environmental office that does burn permits. So if we see anything or find out about anything, we actually individually, separate from this, as a private citizen, make efforts to make those photographs happen as we travel around the state for things.
I wish we did have that ability, especially in places that really need our help, but we don't.
Last question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you do a brief update on if we are getting a demo permit to review as a formality for the granary? How does that process work? Because we never actually, we
That
did a
was-
lot of process
Right.
without our normal process.
That was my item for my staff report, so.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So, I spoke with the Public Works Director, the Tier 3 sort of super study that you all asked for, that you asked for funding for $5,000, that was approved, it's been completed, the county is ready to demolish the granary. It's going to be handled by an Amish company. They're actually going to dismantle the granary and reuse all the materials.
I wish we
That's
were
great.
keeping the granary in the county and rebuilding the granary somewhere else where it could actually be serviceable, intact.
I understand.
Can we put that on the agenda? Is that something we can put on the agenda at the next meeting? Because that's a whole process that I think the whole group should hear.
What, concerning the granary, or?
Yeah.
the process by which that,
Everything that we all just went through, that wasn't an actual group formal process because there was no demo permit on file for us to review as a committee. That was two people doing work for the commissioners from this commission.
But that is how the law is set up. Either the chair or the chair's designee have a vote about whether or not it should be a tier 3 review, and the planning director does. And if any one of the three of us says it needs tier 3 review, it goes to tier 3 review. That
Oh, no, I
actually
meant,
is the process.
When can we put it on the agenda, or we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting, because the whole group as a whole has not actually heard the whole
Like
process.
a report out.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, of
No,
course.
No
of
question
course.
of what we've done, but
Yeah.
I think it's important that the whole group
Maybe we should
hear the
meet next month.
entire. Yeah, because there's a lot to talk about, just like this comment, there's a lot to, pull apart and talk about with regard to, these are county-owned properties or state-owned properties, and what happens to them when they come to us for these
And
questions.
it took a lot of commission time when we were dealing with that granary. We dealt with it for years. And it took hours and hours of staff time and our time for us to end up at this result.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you, Pat.
And engineering time, too.
And engineering time.
So what I hear is you'd like to meet again in 2 months. Do you want me to do a doodle poll in the future for that, or do you want to set a date tonight?
Actually, because of the granary things and with it going down, I have other questions that are separate from this. Could we do it in the month, next 45 days, 30, 45 days? And could you do everyone else, Max, pitch in. I appreciate the doodle poll, because if you can give me dates for the next year, it doesn't mean I can show up.
Yeah.
Next
that
week
works.
changes, so I'd prefer to have a doodle poll that's within a 2 to 4 week notice, so that
Okay.
we can make time, because schedules just don't work that way.
It was
Okay.
very helpful.
That's
though.
very
I
helpful,
thought
very
that was-
helpful.
I thought that was really helpful and easy.
Good. Okay, so then if you want to meet in a month, then in 2 weeks from now, I should send out a doodle poll.
Yeah, I'll only tell you that I can meet from the 8th to the 20th of April.
Okay?
Okay, we'll figure it out. We'll work around that.
Thank you.
May I be
It's
excused?
important that you.
Yes, Max, thank you for coming.
Okay. Take care, guys.
Bye, Max.
Bye, Max.
Bye.
Okay?
Anything further, Bill?
No, ma'am.
Anything further from the?
Not for
commission?
me.
Thank you.
I call our meeting to close. Adjourned. I forget the words all the time.
Congratulations.